Hi everyone, so we're going to be looking at the excretory system today. So this is the third body system that we're looking at in this topic. So the purpose of the excretory system is to mainly remove excess and unwanted substances from the body and to regulate water and iron concentration in the blood. So we're going to focus on removing excess and unwanted substances and regulating water. So the waste that we remove through our excretory system include carbon dioxide from cellular respiration, toxins, and the nitrogenous waste from breaking down proteins. So what is urine? Well, urine is a liquid that contains water, nitrogenous wastes such as urea, ammonia, uric acid, and creatinine, which is made when your muscles break down proteins, as well as salts and iron. So this is what urine consists of. So when proteins are metabolized, broken down into amino acids, so amino acids are the building blocks of protein, these amino acids either need to be immediately used or our bodies will convert them into ammonia, so NH3. Ammonia is toxic to our cells, so it either has to be broken down further or removed immediately. And the way that this is done depends on the organism and where it lives. For example, aquatic animals excrete ammonia directly into their environment, so this requires very little energy from them, and this is okay to do because ammonia is water soluble. So if you are a fish, live in the ocean, you excrete that waste directly into the water surrounding you. Mammals, however, cannot excrete ammonia directly, so we have to convert it into urea first. And urea is a substance that can safely travel through the blood. And this is then filtered by the kidneys and excreted with water in urine. So we will lose water in this process as we are trying to get rid of the nitrogenous waste that are left behind once we break down proteins. But because ammonia is toxic to us, this is the best process that our bodies have developed. Birds and some reptiles, however, are able to convert ammonia into uric acid, which is not toxic, does not require a lot of water, and this is an adaptation that these animals have developed to be able to conserve water. Whereas in mammals, we have to use water to get rid of these wastes. These animals have evolved to not need to do that. And you probably have seen this if you've seen, and I'm sure you've ever seen bird poop. Well, it's actually uric acid. It's very thick. It's the nitrogenous waste that the birds are getting rid of. One of the major components of the excretory system is the urinary tract, and this is what filters waste substances out of the blood, and this is then excreted in urine. And it also helps maintain stable levels of water and ions in the blood. So if you think back to when I said that the main purpose of the excretory system was to get rid of waste as well as regulate water loss, this is what the urinary tract does, in particular the kidneys, which we'll look at in just a second. So I'm going to summarize the role of the urinary tract step by step. So firstly, blood enters the kidneys. Let me just draw that in. So blood is going to enter the kidneys via the renal artery. So renal means kidney, and an artery takes blood away from the heart to other parts of the body. So this is coming from the body, it contains waste, and it's bringing it to the kidney. Then this blood is filtered by passing it through millions of nephrons, and these nephrons exist in this kidney over here. And we're going to look at the structure and the function of nephrons in detail in just a moment. So waste pass through the ureter to the bladder as urine. So the wastes that were in the blood, such as ammonia, pass down here through the ureter into the bladder. Then the filtered blood, so the blood that has had the waste removed, leaves the kidney and returns to the heart, all right, via the renal vein. And lastly, the bladder stores the urine and passes the urine through the ureter, so down here, and this is what we excrete as waste into the toilet. So there is a big focus on the kidneys because they play a major role in the excretory system. It's extremely vital in filtering blood and reabsorbing useful substances within the fluid, and then secreting unwanted substances by producing urine. Like I said, renal refers to kidneys. If you ever hear renal something, such as renal failure, means that the kidney is failing. And this is the approximate location of our kidneys, and we've got 2 of them. So let's look at the structure of kidneys. So we've got our renal cortex, it's this outer darker layer of the kidney. The renal artery, as I mentioned before, brings blood from the body to the kidney to be filtered, and renal vein takes the filtered blood away from the kidney back to the body. The renal medulla is this lighter browny pink color. This is where all our nephrons are. So this is the structure that is doing the filtering. The calyx is another part, this very light colored part, that is where urine passes through, and the renal pelvis is where urine collects before it is funneled into the ureter and then goes to the bladder and out of the body. So let's look at the nephrons in detail. You might look at this and think this is extremely confusing, but by the end of this you're going to know exactly what each part does. Just to start you off, the blue part is the nephron and the red part is our blood vessels. So this is the blood that is bringing the waste to the kidney to be filtered. So we have about 1 million nephrons in your kidneys, which is a lot because your kidneys are filtering all your blood, and they span across the cortex and the medulla. So the first part is filtration, and this is when blood flows into the glomerulus, which is this section of capillaries over here. There are a lot of capillaries in the glomerulus, and the blood moves at a very high pressure through the glomerulus and pushes the fluid into the Bowman's capsule, which is this horseshoe shape over here. And this is the first part of our nephron. So small molecules such as urea and water pass through the glomerulus into the Bowman's capsule, and this fluid is what we call primary filtrate, and it's going to move through the rest of the nephron. Larger substances such as blood and proteins remain in the capillaries of the glomerulus. If for some reason blood is found in the urine, because remember that the nephrons in the kidneys produce urine, which is then passed out of us. So if for whatever reason blood does end up in the Bowman's capsule, passes through the nephrons and ends up in the urine, this can indicate that this filtration process is not working properly. Maybe we have some damaged glomerular blood vessels, so the glomerulus over here might be damaged, which allows blood to flow in to the nephron, or we have a very extremely high blood pressure, so that extreme high blood pressure pushes even larger substances through. So the main part that I want you to know is that the glomerulus is a network of capillaries, a very dense network of capillaries, and the blood flows into the glomerulus at very high pressure, which forces the fluid, such as urea and water, into the Bowman's capsule. Next, we have reabsorption, and this is quite a lengthy process, so pause this video if you need to, but this first part occurs from the filtrate flowing into the proximal convoluted tubule, which is this part that I'm highlighting right now. Proximal means close to, so it's the closest to the start of the nephron, so the proximal convoluted tubule. Here, glucose, ions, amino acids are reabsorbed back into the capillary, so they go back into the blood, and this happens via active transport. So we're going to have protein pumps doing this. This is because we need these substances. We don't want to get rid of them in urine, so we want to take back the glucose, the ions, the amino acids back into the capillary so our bodies can use it. This is where about 65% of water is reabsorbed. via osmosis. So this is a passive transport. So a lot of reabsorption happens in this proximal convoluted tubule. So to continue on with reabsorption, we have the filtrate moving from the proximal convoluted tubule into this loop called the loop of Henle. So it's made up of two parts. The descending limb, which is this part that's moving down, so descending means down, and the ascending limb, which means the filtrate is moving up. So I'm going to go through what happens in this loop of Henle. It can be a little bit complicated, so pause the video at any point that you need. So the first part is that we have ions being pumped out of the ascending limb. So ions get pumped out from this limb, and it creates a high concentration around the descending limb. So let's see that happens. Ions pumped out of the ascending limb, and it creates a high concentration of solute, so the ions are the solute around the descending limb. This is important because now that we have the high concentration around the descending limb, water is going to move out of the descending limb because water moves to an area of high solute concentration via osmosis. We know this. And this then allows the water to be reabsorbed into the capillaries, so into the blood. So water moves out and it's reabsorbed into the blood. Next, we have ions diffuse back into the descending limb. So it's going to diffuse back in here, right? Because remember, with diffusion, it is movement of substances from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration. So it's high concentration out here, and it's going to move back into the descending limb where there is low concentration. The ascending limb, right over here, is impermeable to water. So water cannot be reabsorbed at this part. That's why we have to pump it out to the descending limb and have water reabsorbed over here. So ions diffuse in, as you can see here, and as they diffuse back in, the cycle repeats. So they go back to being pumped out, creating a high concentration, water moves out, water is reabsorbed, the ions diffuse back in, and then we have this cycle happening, which allows for water to be reabsorbed. Because remember, part of the functions of the excretory system is to regulate water balance, and so we need to reabsorb water. Right. So urea can also be secreted into the nephron at this point. So we're still in the loop of Henle, and if there's any urea in the blood, it can be secreted into the nephron. And the filtrate that we have now is highly concentrated, right? We've reabsorbed a lot of water. It is just a lot of the waste left over. And this is the process that starts to create urine. All right, so now this filtrate is moved to the distal convoluted tubule. So distal means distant, so it is the tubule that is furthest away. So filtrate moves to the distal convoluted tube. More water and ions can be reabsorbed if the body needs it. So if we're really dehydrated, we will reabsorb more water here. If there's any toxins in our blood, it may be secreted into this part of the nephron. And then now we have very concentrated filtrate, right? We've reabsorbed all the water that we need to, and whatever wastes are left over all comes to the collecting duct. So all the nephrons lead to this collecting duct, and this is now urine. We reabsorb more water if we need to here. Ammonia is secreted into the collecting duct if there's any ammonia in the blood. And this urine then flows down the collecting duct into the ureter. So the urine that was in the collecting duct flows down into the ureter, and then into the bladder, and then it is excreted via the urethra. So if you're really dehydrated, your kidneys will reabsorb more water, making your urine much more concentrated. So if you look down this far end over here, you've got very dark colored urine. That's because there's not a lot of water diluting it. If you're very well hydrated, your kidneys do not need to reabsorb as much water, and your urine is going to be much lighter. So this is kind of the color of urine that you are aiming for. All right, so we've looked at the excretory system in humans, and it's very similar in other animals, but we're going to look at a few differences. So for example, animals that live in very arid, so hot and dry environments have an excretory system that is adapted to their environment. Right, so they are able to reabsorb a lot of water in their kidneys. Because they don't have a lot of water in their environment, they don't want to be losing water via urine. Therefore, their urine is very highly concentrated. An example is camels. So camels have a very long loop of Henle so that they can reabsorb as much water as possible. And I have a little diagram here that compares a cow, so that lives in very normal conditions where there is water available, so it's okay to lose more water, and has a shorter loop of Henle, compared to a desert animal, which is a desert rat over here. Not a lot of water in the environment, going to have a very large loop of Henle to reabsorb all that water. All right, so let's look at some malfunctions of the excretory system. So like I mentioned earlier, you can have kidney failure, and this occurs when the kidneys no longer effectively remove waste or regulate water and ions concentration in the blood. So this is the main function of the excretory system. If it's not doing this, we have kidney failure. A lot of things can cause kidney failure, including high blood pressure, diabetes, polycystic kidney disease, swelling of the nephrons, which is called glomerulonephritis, and also some medications can damage the kidneys. So this is an image of polycystic kidneys, and this is an inflammation of the glomerulus. Kidney failure can occur quickly, so acute kidney failure, or it can develop slowly, which we call chronic kidney failure. Kidney transplants, however, are extremely successful and provide a permanent solution. So if your kidneys no longer work, you can have a transplant. While people are waiting for a transplant, however, they undergo something called dialysis, and this is a dialysis machine. So essentially, this is a machine that filters the blood externally. So the blood is removed from the patient. It is filtered by this dialysis machine. So this is what your kidneys would normally do, your nephrons in particular. And once the wastes are removed by the dialysis machine, the filtered blood is returned to the patient. And because this is a very important function in our bodies, we can't have waste building up in our bloodstream. This is something that patients need to do about 3 to 4 times a week, and it can take a few hours every single time. But you can imagine that is the case if you're filtering all your blood. So, hope you enjoy this joke. If you have any questions, please bring them to class, and I will see you there.